The Galactic Council chamber was a place of cold elegance. A vast room, its curved walls formed a shimmering dome that stretched far above, the ceiling alive with swirling lights from distant stars. Species from 1,000 worlds filled the seats in the circular auditorium, their forms varying from tentacled masses to beings with crystalline exteriors, some humanoid, others unrecognizable. The air buzzed with the hum of interstellar diplomacy, each word weighed with centuries of history and the power of countless civilizations. Captain Sarah Allen stood at the center of it all, her sharp eyes scanning the room, taking in every detail. The council members sat in a semicircle before her, and she was acutely aware of their scrutiny. Velzarek, the Archon of the Varn Dominion, sat in the seat closest to her, his cold, calculating gaze never leaving her. The others, representatives of the various factions, watched the proceedings silently, their expressions unreadable. Sarah had prepared for this moment her entire life. As Earth's chief negotiator, she carried not just her own hopes, but the future of her planet on her shoulders. She knew the Varn Dominion well enough to understand their methods, smooth, insidious, always with a touch of arrogance. Velzarek's reputation preceded him. A master manipulator, he'd secured his place in the Galactic Council through shrewd political maneuvering and brutal, calculated force when necessary. Today, his gaze held an unsettling promise. The silence stretched, thick with tension. Velzarek leaned forward, his voice smooth as it cut through the stillness. "You are aware, Captain Allen, that we are here today to resolve the matter of the Etheum resource." His words were laced with an edge, an implication of inevitability. "The resource we now know humanity has discovered, and which, by every law of intergalactic protocol, belongs to the Galactic Council." Sarah met his gaze. Her expression was neutral, but her mind was racing. Etheum, a rare and powerful element that could fuel an entire galaxy for millennia, had been discovered on Earth's newly colonized planet, Thalassar. No one, not even the Galactic Council, had expected humanity to find it first. And now they wanted it. More than that, they wanted to control it, to ensure that Earth would be their pawn in a galaxy-wide game of power. Sarah's fingers tightened on the sides of the podium before her, but her voice remained calm, measured. "Archon, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. The resource is on Earth's territory. It's ours by right." Velzarek's lips curled into a smile, but it was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "And yet, your right is a mere technicality. The Council, as you are well aware, has had its eyes on Etheum for centuries. It was only a matter of time before the resource came to light. The time for negotiations has passed. It is a matter of galactic stability now." A murmur passed through the room. Sarah's jaw clenched, but she held her ground. The Council had always played the long game, and this was no different. They were attempting to force her hand, to push humanity into a corner where surrender was the only option. But Sarah Allen wasn't one to bend easily. "You underestimate humanity," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "We don't negotiate from a position of weakness. If you think we'll just hand over control of Etheum to you, you're gravely mistaken." The room fell into an uneasy silence. Velzarek's expression remained unchanged, but his eyes darkened. "You misunderstand, Captain? It's not a matter of if you will hand it over, it's a matter of when." At his words, the tension in the room escalated. Sarah could feel the subtle shift, the way the atmosphere seemed to thicken as the council members subtly aligned themselves, some with Velzarek, others watching intently to see how this would play out. Sarah wasn't fooled. This wasn't just about a resource, it was about power. Control. And the Galactic Council was about to find out just how far humanity was willing to go to protect its sovereignty. She shifted, stepping forward slightly. "You may have the numbers, Archon. You may have the influence. But Earth has something you don't." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "We have resolve. We won't be intimidated." Velzarek's gaze narrowed, and for a moment, the air in the chamber seemed to crackle with the threat of violence. But instead of reacting with fury, the Archon simply nodded, as if conceding a point. His smile returned, this time colder, more calculated. "Very well, Captain. Let it be known that Earth has made its stance clear. The Council, however, will not be swayed by empty threats. He leaned back in his seat, his tone shifting to one of finality. You will reconsider in time. All will see the wisdom of our cause. And when you do, you will have no choice but to sign. Sarah held his gaze, her resolve as firm as steel. Not today, Archon. Not ever. The room erupted into hushed murmurs. The tension between them hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. But Sarah wasn't finished. This was just the beginning, and she had no intention of backing down. She turned to the Council at large. We are here today to discuss this resource, but let us be clear, humanity will not be forced into any agreement. If you want peace, you'll have to earn it. The Council members exchanged looks, some unsettled, others intrigued. Velzarik's face hardened, his earlier confidence slipping just slightly. He wasn't used to being challenged, not like this. And for the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. Is that your final stance, Captain? He asked, his voice a low growl. It is, Sarah replied, her voice unwavering. The Archon's smile faded. He stood, his towering figure imposing even in the vast chamber. Then, Captain Allen, prepare for the consequences. As he turned to exit the chamber, Sarah remained where she stood, her heart pounding but her expression calm. This wasn't just about a treaty anymore. This was a declaration, a line in the sand. Humanity had drawn its first, bold stroke. And the galaxy would feel it. The tension in the Galactic Council chamber had thickened after Sarah's declaration. What had started as a subtle clash of words now simmered beneath the surface, like a volcano on the verge of eruption. Sarah knew that the Archon's patience was a fragile thing, and she'd pushed it to the breaking point. What came next could set the galaxy on a path toward open conflict. But she had no intention of backing down. Not now, not ever. As the assembly dispersed, Sarah moved swiftly, her mind already spinning through the next moves. The Council had planned for this moment, the human refusal to comply, the resistance to their demands. But they hadn't planned on her. She strode out of the Council hall, her boots echoing against the sleek metal floors. Behind her, the whispers of the alien representatives faded into the distance. Velzarik's words rang in her ears, but she pushed them aside. What mattered now was securing her position, both in the Council and on Earth. She couldn't afford to lose. In the private chambers of the United Earth Federation's delegation, Sarah was met by her second-in-command, Lieutenant Kira Cole. Kira's face was tight with concern as she stepped forward, her tone clipped. Captain, we've received an encrypted transmission from Earth. It's a directive from the High Council. Sarah's eyes narrowed. The High Council had already been pressuring her to make concessions, to smooth things over with the Galactic Council. They weren't pleased with the hardline stance she had taken. Put it through, Sarah said, her voice steady. The hollow projector flickered to life, revealing a stern-faced man in military uniform. Admiral Robert Price, her superior on Earth, appeared before her. Captain Allen, you've made your position clear. But there are those on Earth who believe diplomacy might still work. His voice was calm, but there was a palpable edge to it. You're walking a razor-thin line, Sarah. The Council's response will be swift. If you push them too far, it may be war. I'm not blind to the risks, Admiral, Sarah replied, her voice cool. But if we back down now, we'll be nothing but pawns in their game. Humanity deserves better than that. Price's gaze hardened. I understand, but don't underestimate the Council's reach. They'll use every lever they can to make you bend. If they resort to force. They will, Sarah interrupted. And that's exactly why we need to be prepared. Price exhaled sharply, his gaze shifting momentarily. You're playing a dangerous game, Sarah. Make sure you don't lose it. The transmission ended, and Sarah stood still for a moment, the weight of her responsibility pressing on her chest. She turned to Kira. Get the fleet on alert. We're not just negotiating for a resource anymore. We're fighting for our place in the galaxy. Kira nodded, her jaw tight. Understood, Captain? The next few days passed in a blur of activity. The Galactic Council had not yet responded to Sarah's defiance, but the tension in the air was palpable. The Varn Dominion's delegates, led by Velzarek, kept to themselves, their whispers running like a current through the corridors. Sarah knew they were planning something, but what? She couldn't afford to wait for their move. She had to make her own. Sarah convened a private meeting with her most trusted officers in the Federation. The room was small, a sterile briefing area within the delegation's headquarters, but it was enough. She glanced around the table at the faces of the men and women who had followed her through countless battles, who had been by her side when the odds seemed insurmountable. Their trust in her was absolute, but she could see the unease in their eyes. The stakes had never been higher. We've seen the threats. We know the risks. The Varn Dominion won't stop until they get what they want, Sarah said, her tone calm but unwavering. But we're not going to be bullied. We'll do what we've always done, fight smart. Lieutenant Cole leaned forward. We've already sent a message to our allies in the Confederation. If things go south, they'll have our back. That's good, Sarah replied, nodding. But we need more than just allies. We need leverage. The Council's fractured. Velzarek might be powerful, but not all the factions are behind him. Some are starting to question his methods. A sharp-eyed officer, Commander Felix Ward, raised a hand. Are we going to play their game? I mean, we could outbid the Council for Etheum, offer the smaller factions a better deal. Sarah shook her head. No. That's what they want. We won't play by their rules. We need to expose their hypocrisy. We need them to see that humanity is a force in the galaxy, not a pawn. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. I want a team to infiltrate the Council's diplomatic archives. Find any dirt on Velzarek or the Council's backdoor dealings. If we can't convince them with force, we'll do it with the truth. The room was silent for a moment. The plan was risky, dangerous even, but it was the only way. Sarah knew she was gambling with more than just her career. If the mission failed, Earth would be left vulnerable, and the Council would seize control of the Etheum deposit without question. We'll need to move fast, Kira said. If we wait too long, we lose our chance. I know, Sarah replied, her voice tight. Prepare for extraction within the next 24 hours. No mistakes. The officers stood and left the room to carry out their orders. Alone now, Sarah allowed herself a moment of reflection. This was the moment where history would be written. Would humanity rise to the occasion, or would it bow to the will of the Galactic Council? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime. She glanced at the holographic display beside her. Another transmission from the Galactic Council. Velzarek was requesting a meeting. His message was simple. It's time to talk, Captain Allen. Sarah stared at the screen for a long moment. A trap, no doubt. But it was a trap she had to step into. She straightened her uniform and walked toward the communication terminal. The time for games was over. Put him through. The screen flickered, and there was Velzarek, his cold eyes glinting with amusement. Captain, it seems we find ourselves at an impasse. I trust you're prepared to reconsider your position? I'm not here to talk about Etheum Archon, Sarah replied, her voice firm. I'm here to talk about your lies. Velzarek raised an eyebrow. Bold words, Captain. But I suspect you're in over your head. We'll see, Sarah said, locking eyes with him. We'll see. The game was just beginning. The atmosphere in the council chambers was stifling. The heavy scent of alien perfumes mixed with the sterile metallic air. Sarah stood at the center of the room, flanked by her closest aides, her back straight, eyes sharp. The Varn Dominion seat, directly across from hers, remained empty for the moment, but she could feel the weight of Velzarek's looming presence behind it. The Galactic Council had convened once again. Only this time, Sarah's stance had hardened. There was no more posturing, no more polite discussion. The time for subtle diplomacy had passed. The transmission from Velzarek had been a direct threat, no veiled words, no games. Your resistance will cost you, Captain. The Council will not be mocked. He'd promised retribution, and now it was clear that retribution was coming. Sarah could feel the gaze of every representative in the room on her. Some watched with cold interest, while others had begun to whisper among themselves. The council wasn't used to defiance, and humanity was the last species anyone thought would challenge their power. But Earth had proved them wrong. Now Sarah would prove that she wasn't just another player in their game. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and Velzarek entered, flanked by his two closest advisors. His presence was almost suffocating, the sheer authority in his walk commanding immediate attention. He took his seat with deliberate slowness, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. The tension in the air tightened, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Sarah met his gaze, unflinching. She wasn't going to show any fear. Not now, not ever. "You've come," Velzarek said, his voice smooth but edged with disdain. "How predictable." Sarah's lips curled into a faint smile. "I thought it was time we actually talked." "I think you've mistaken the situation, Captain," he replied, his tone growing colder. "This isn't about talk anymore. This is about compliance. You and your people will do as you're told. The Council will not be humiliated by your obstinance." A murmur rippled through the Council at his words, some of the more vocal representatives nodding in agreement. The factions that aligned with the Varn Dominion were already moving in lockstep, their positions firm. But Sarah wasn't about to let them dominate the conversation. "I'll tell you what's predictable, Archon," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Your arrogance. Your belief that you can simply take what you want from humanity because we're the new kids on the block." She stepped forward, meeting his eyes directly. "But we're not a weak species. We won't roll over for anyone. Least of all you." Velzarek leaned back in his chair, a thin smile playing across his lips. "You're brave, Captain. But bravery won't protect your people." Sarah's pulse quickened, but her outward composure never wavered. "And it's not bravery that will protect us. It's our resolve. We won't be bullied, Archon. We'll fight for our freedom, with words, and if necessary, with force." The room fell silent. Velzarek's smile faltered slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. His fingers drummed lightly on the arm of his chair. "So, this is your final stance. You refuse to negotiate. You would rather plunge the galaxy into war than concede the smallest portion of what's due to the Council." Sarah stood tall, her voice unwavering. "Yes. The resource is on our soil. It's ours. If the Council wants it, they'll have to take it from us. But make no mistake, Archon, if that's what you're planning, you'll find that humanity doesn't go down without a fight." Velzarek's expression shifted then, the calm veneer cracking for just a moment. The glint in his eyes sharpened, like a predator sensing weakness. "You misunderstand, Captain. The Council is not concerned with what is yours or ours. We are concerned with the balance of the galaxy. You will either sign the treaty and submit to the will of the Council, or you will face the consequences. It's as simple as that." Sarah could feel the room's atmosphere shift. The Varn Dominion's representatives, now joined by a few of the more militaristic factions, leaned forward, their expressions hardening. Some seemed eager for conflict. The weight of their support only solidified Velzarek's resolve. But Sarah wasn't intimidated. "You speak of balance," Sarah said, her tone quiet but sharp. "What you really mean is control. You want to monopolize the resources, to keep humanity and every other species under your thumb. But you're wrong if you think we'll just let you have it." There was a moment of stillness. Then, one of the smaller factions, a delegate from the Kari, a race of long-limbed, telepathic beings, spoke up. "The Captain speaks the truth. We've watched the Council's maneuvers, and we see the danger in it. The idea of one species controlling the resources of the galaxy is unsustainable." Sarah's eyes flicked to the Kari delegate. A small win. Some of the factions were beginning to doubt Velzarek's approach. There was hope in that. But Velzarek's voice sliced through the room, cold and commanding. "I will not be swayed by the pitiful cries of the weak. The time for discussion is over. Captain Allen, you will sign the treaty, or there will be consequences. And those consequences will be war," Sarah said, her voice rising with defiance. You can't intimidate us into submission. Humanity won't be your footstool. Velzarik's eyes narrowed. You're making a grave mistake, Captain. I've already made my decision. I'll stand by it, no matter the cost. Sarah responded firmly. The Archon stood, his imposing figure casting a long shadow over the room. Then you have sealed your fate. Sarah stood her ground, her heart pounding. This wasn't just a political game anymore. This was the beginning of something much bigger. The consequences of her defiance were unfolding before her eyes, and no matter how much the Council tried to intimidate her, there was no turning back now. Prepare yourselves, Captain, Velzarik said, his voice low, almost a growl. When the Council acts, you will wish you had signed. Sarah met his gaze without flinching. We will be ready. With that, Velzarik turned, his advisors falling in line behind him. The council room emptied as the representatives slowly filed out, many of them avoiding Sarah's gaze. Some were already whispering among themselves, their voices laced with doubt and fear. The galaxy had just entered a new phase, and it was clear to Sarah that the lines were drawn. There would be no negotiation. Alone in the chamber, Sarah took a long, steadying breath. The battle had just begun. The countdown had begun. Sarah Allen stood at the observation window of the Federation delegation's headquarters, staring out at the vast expanse of space. It was a rare moment of quiet. Outside, the stars twinkled coldly, indifferent to the events unfolding on Viridian, the neutral world where the Galactic Council was headquartered. The hum of activity within the building was distant, but her mind was sharper than ever. The message had come through barely an hour ago. The Varn Dominion was mobilizing its fleet. War was no longer a matter of if, it was a matter of when. Velzarik had made it clear, humanity's refusal to sign the treaty had sealed their fate. The Council's patience had worn thin, and now they were preparing to make a decisive move. The thought of what was to come sent a ripple of unease through her, but Sarah didn't flinch. She wasn't in the business of second-guessing her decisions. She had known the risks from the start. What mattered now was what came next, and how humanity would face the storm that was about to break. Behind her, Lieutenant Kira Cole entered the room, her face a mirror of grim determination. Sarah could feel the tension radiating from her, the same tension that had gripped every member of the Federation delegation since the Council's ultimatum. The fleet's on high alert, Kira said, her voice steady but tinged with concern. All ships are prepared for immediate deployment. We've received word from our allies. They're ready to move at a moment's notice. Sarah nodded, but the knot in her stomach didn't ease. We're going to need more than just allies, Kira. The Varn Dominion won't back down. Neither will the other factions that support them. They'll come at us with everything they have. Kira stepped closer, her eyes locked on Sarah's. We've been through worse, Captain. And we'll get through this. But we need a plan. Now. I'm working on it, Sarah said, turning back to the window. We can't win this through force alone. We need leverage. Kira was silent for a moment, then spoke again, her voice low. You're talking about exposure, aren't you? Sarah glanced at her, her eyes steely. Exactly. Velzarik thinks he's invincible. But there are cracks in the Council's facade. We can't just face them head-on with ships and weapons. We need to show the galaxy what kind of man he really is. Kira nodded, understanding the implication. You want to dig up his dirt. Get to the heart of the corruption. Not just corruption. I want to expose his manipulation of the Council, his hidden dealings with the other factions. We can't win this battle on the battlefield, but we can win it in the Council chambers. A moment of silence passed, then Kira spoke again, her voice quiet but resolute. You're going to need a team to infiltrate the Council's archives. It'll be risky. They've got security systems that are practically impenetrable. I know, Sarah replied, a plan already forming in her mind. We'll have to move fast and strike hard. I want every angle covered. If we get the intel we need, we can turn the tide. But we don't have much time. The Varn fleet won't wait forever. The door slid open, and Commander Felix Ward entered, his face grim. Captain, the situation just escalated. We've intercepted a communication from Velzarik. He's preparing to launch a preemptive strike on Earth's orbital defenses. If we don't act now, we'll be caught flat-footed. Sarah's stomach twisted. Velzarik's audacity was staggering. A preemptive strike meant the war was no longer hypothetical. It was real. But she wasn't about to back down now. We'll move as planned, Sarah said, her voice firm. Kira, I need you to assemble a team for the intel operation. Get them ready to move in the next few hours. Kira nodded sharply, already on her way out of the room. Sarah turned to Felix. Have our fleet ready for combat. But no offense until we have to. We need to buy time. Felix's brow furrowed. You're going to hold off the Varn fleet with minimal resources? I'm not going to hold them off, Felix. I'm going to make them think we're outmatched. Sarah's lips curled into a hard smile. We can't win through force, but we can make them believe they've already won. Felix stared at her, his expression mixed with disbelief and grudging respect. You've got a plan. What are you thinking? Let them come at us, Sarah said, her voice low but determined. We'll act weak, act disorganized. Draw them in. Once they're overconfident, we'll hit them where it hurts. Felix didn't argue. He knew the captain's mind better than anyone. He was already moving toward the door, his voice filled with urgency. I'll get to work on the fleet's positioning. We'll give them a show they won't forget. Sarah turned back to the window, her eyes fixed on the black expanse outside. The countdown was accelerating, but she wasn't backing down. Not now. The next few hours passed in a blur. Sarah coordinated the movements of the Federation fleet, ensuring that every ship was in position. The entire fleet would be on standby, waiting for the Varn Dominion's next move. The hope was simple. If they could make Velzarik's forces think they were outmatched, they could delay the initial strike long enough for the infiltration team to gather the critical data they needed. As the minutes ticked by, Sarah felt the weight of what was coming. This wasn't just about Etheum anymore. It was about survival. It was about proving to the Council, and the galaxy, that humanity wouldn't be intimidated, wouldn't bend to anyone's will. A chime broke the silence. It was Kira, her voice crackling through the comms. Captain, we've got the intel we need. We've uncovered a series of encrypted files from Velzarik's private archives. It's all there, his dealings with the other factions, his manipulation of council votes, everything. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Send it to me. A few moments later, the data flooded her terminal. As she skimmed through the files, her expression hardened. Velzarik had been playing a long game, and his ties to several of the more corrupt factions were clearer than ever. But there was more, something bigger. He'd been orchestrating a power grab across multiple sectors, all in the name of consolidating control over resources like Etheum. This is it, Sarah whispered to herself. This is how we win. With the proof of Velzarik's corruption in hand, Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline. The game was far from over, but now she had the leverage she needed. It wasn't just about fighting back anymore. It was about showing the galaxy the truth about the man who thought he could control it. Her finger hovered over the comms button. The time to strike was coming. But then, the warning lights flashed. The Varn fleet had entered Earth's orbit. The battle had begun. Ask ChatGPT. The war had begun. Sarah Allen sat in the Federation Command Center, her eyes glued to the holographic display of Earth's orbit. The Varn Dominion's fleet loomed like a gathering storm, massive ships silhouetted against the backdrop of the planet below. Her fleet, outnumbered and outgunned, was positioned in a defensive formation, waiting for the inevitable attack. The countdown had reached its critical point. There's no turning back now. Captain, we've got incoming. Felix Ward's voice broke through the hum of the command center. His tone was tight, controlled, but there was no hiding the weight of the moment. Varn ships are opening fire. Sarah didn't flinch. She had known this was coming. The Council had made its move, and now it was time to make hers. The only question was whether the Federation could hold long enough to expose Velzarik for the manipulative tyrant he was. Deploy the countermeasures, she ordered, her voice calm but commanding. Activate the defense shields and initiate evasive maneuvers. We're buying time. The first barrage from the Varn fleet hit with the force of a thunderstorm. A wave of energy pulses raked across the Federation shields, sending a tremor through the hulls of the ships. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Her heart raced, but her mind remained clear. They had been preparing for this. They could survive it. Shields at 70%. Kira's voice came in over the comms. We can't take another hit like that. Keep holding, Sarah said, her eyes scanning the data on the screen. The Federation fleet was no match for the Varn ships in a direct confrontation, but if they could keep their ships mobile, they could buy enough time for the next phase of the plan. Keep them on the move. Make them chase us. Felix's voice echoed through the command center. Captain, we've got the encrypted files from the infiltration team. They've exposed Velzarek's dealings with the Council. Sarah's pulse quickened. It's time. Send them to every communications relay in range. I want the whole galaxy to know what Velzarek has been doing. The Varn ships continued their assault, but now Sarah's focus was divided. She had the leverage she needed, and it was time to shift the balance of power. The data, the truth, was about to become their weapon. A few tense moments passed before the comms crackled. Captain, message sent. The data is out. The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the first ripple of change began to stir. The Varn fleet's energy flared as they scrambled to intercept the message, but it was already too late. The truth was out. One by one, the ships of the Galactic Council began to shift their positions. The once solid formation of the Varn fleet began to falter as members of the Council's factions hesitated. Sarah could see the hesitation spread like wildfire. The faces of the representatives in the council chambers, once so sure of their power, were now contorted in disbelief. Velzarek's voice boomed through the comms, cold and threatening. You have no idea what you've done, Captain. The Council will not forgive this. Sarah's eyes never wavered from the hollow screen. The Council won't forgive you, Archon. You've been playing both sides for too long. The galaxy will never trust you again. His laugh was hollow, almost desperate. You think they'll rally behind you? You've exposed my dealings, but that doesn't change the fact that I control the galaxy's most powerful fleets. You controlled the Council. Sarah shot back, her voice steady. But now, the galaxy controls its own future. The comms flickered, and Sarah could almost hear the disbelief in Velzarek's voice. You will regret this. You've doomed your people. She didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The Council was fracturing. The momentum was shifting. The Federation fleet continued its evasive maneuvers, weaving in and out of the Varn fleet's gunfire. The Varn ships were disorganized now, unable to coordinate their attack effectively. Some ships began to turn away, their tactical superiority undone by the chaos inside their ranks. But it wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. Captain, we've got incoming fighters, Kira warned. Small skirmish ships. Looks like Velzarek's trying to punch through our defenses with smaller forces. Sarah's lips curled into a grim smile. Let them come. Prepare our fighter squads for interception. The battle shifted once again, this time into the chaos of close-quarters combat. Federation fighter ships darted through the Varn fleet's ranks, their sleek, angular forms zipping in and out of the chaos. Explosions rippled across the screen, bright flashes of light that painted the darkness of space with fiery streaks. Targets locked, Kira said. Ready to fire on your mark, Captain. Hold, Sarah said. She knew what was coming next. Wait for them to make their move. It wasn't long before Velzarek's smaller ships closed the distance. The Federation fighters responded in kind, their weapons systems charging up. The tension was thick as Sarah watched the fighters lock onto their targets. No, Sarah said, her voice commanding. The Federation fighters released their payloads in a swift, coordinated strike. Missiles streaked through the void, cutting through the smaller ships with deadly precision. The Varn fleet's smaller ships were annihilated in moments. The remaining forces broke formation and scattered. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. Sarah's gaze shifted back to the comms screen. Velzarik's face was a mask of fury. You cannot win this, Captain. The Varn Dominion will not be defeated by the likes of you. We've already won, Sarah replied, her voice as cold as the stars outside. Your empire is crumbling. The silence that followed was deafening. Velzarik didn't respond. The realization that his empire was collapsing around him was finally sinking in. In the aftermath of the battle, the damage was undeniable. The Federation had lost several ships, and casualties were significant, but they had held their ground. The Varn fleet had been forced to retreat, and the Council had been irrevocably shaken. Sarah sat back in her chair, her fingers drumming lightly on the console in front of her. She had won the battle, but at what cost? Earth had been pushed to the brink. The Federation had held, but the price of survival had been steep. There was no true victory in war, only the quiet understanding that the galaxy had been irrevocably changed. Humanity had proven itself. The galaxy would never see them as weak again. The truth had been exposed. And with it, the future of the galaxy had shifted. Sarah stared out into the vastness of space, her thoughts a swirl of uncertainty and resolve. The war had ended for now, but the struggle for humanity's place in the galaxy was far from over. But we will endure. We always have. And with that, Sarah Allen stood tall, ready for whatever came next. Ask ChatGPT.